Okay, in this video we're going to go through the course syllabus. We're going to do it kind of quickly. I recommend that you open it up and read it more carefully on your own. So page 1, we've got the standard basic information about the course and instructor contact information. So my contact preference is Pronto. That's the sort of instant messaging app that's integrated with Canvas. I recommend that you also get it for your phone if you have a smartphone or mobile device. I don't prefer email at all. That's my last preference for contact. So Pronto or a Canvas message are the primary way to get a hold of me, but you have my email just in case. Course description, course level learning outcomes, remainder of the front page. Page 2, we have the more specific learning outcomes or objectives for the course. So our course is broken into 4 units. And these units are interrelated, and we're actually going to sort of cover material from multiple units at the same time. And at first that might feel a little bit confusing, but I promise there's a method to the madness. So Unit 1 is about understanding arguments. We're going to spend a lot of time practicing identifying and analyzing arguments. Units 2 and 3 are both about evaluating arguments. For Unit 2, what I'm calling deductive standards, standards for what makes a good argument, is essentially logic. We're going to use the tools of logic to evaluate arguments. Unit 3, the inductive standards, is another set of standards for evaluating arguments that's different from logic. More on that when we get to it. It'll make more sense later. Unit 4 is our unit on cognitive biases and informal fallacies. So we'll sort of focus on the habits of mind that we tend to use when we engage with the world and draw conclusions, and we'll also look at informal fallacies. When we get to informal fallacies, we'll draw upon the tools from the other units in order to evaluate sort of real arguments and find flaws in reasoning. Okay, page 3. This course has a Canvas site. You've probably figured that out by now. Everything you're going to need to have or do is in the Canvas site, no textbook. Communication, again, my preferred method for communication, especially quick, informal questions, tech issues, whatever it is Pronto, because I get a little message on my phone. I'm a millennial too. I don't want to use my email. I will get back to you much more quickly if you send a Pronto message. My second choice would be a Canvas message. That's totally fine. My last choice would be an email. I also am going to hold Zoom office hours. There's a Q&A discussion forum, and there's something called check-ins, more on that later, which will be another way that we can stay in touch. So please do read this communication tools and information page. It's got more info about how we're going to be in touch. So there's some info about Pronto messaging in the syllabus. I'll create another video for that. I'm going to hold my office hours by Zoom Tuesdays 3 to 4 p.m. or by appointment. Don't hesitate to reach out if that's not a good time for you. And we can meet using Zoom or not. That's not the only way we can stay in touch. We can have a live text chat using Pronto or whatever. Zoom is just an easy way to do it. If you do come to a Zoom office hour, you're not required to use a video if you're uncomfortable or anything like that. Let's see, academic integrity and code of conduct. So there is an academic integrity information page. Please do review this because it's not a simple don't cheat. There are guidelines for each of the assignments that you might find helpful. So check out the academic integrity page. It's got detailed course-specific guidelines for our materials. Page 5, evaluation. So how are you going to be evaluated in this course? If you look at our little donut wheel here, 5% of your grade is based on something called check-in. So each week you'll have an opportunity to check in. It's essentially a quick reflection and opportunity to ask questions or give feedback. This will only take you a couple of minutes to do. Ideally, it's something you do after you've completed all the work for the week, but you don't have to complete all the work for the week in order to check in. So check in by the end of the week, no matter where you're at. Indeed, if you are falling behind, checking in is especially important. So don't forget to check in. There's going to be quite a bit of homework. You'll have a homework assignment every week, 15 of them. That's 27% of the grade. There will be 7 quizzes, technically 8 because there's a syllabus quiz, but 7 real quizzes sort of interspersed throughout the semester, and then a final exam. There's sort of more detail here about how much so there's 10 check-ins that count. There are 15 opportunities. 5 will be dropped, the lowest 5, so you can miss up to 5 without penalty, and each one is worth 5. There are 15 homework assignments. Those are worth 18 points apiece. There are going to be 8 quizzes, 7 of them actual content quizzes, 60 points apiece, final exam. Now there's more information about each of these categories on the next page. So how many there are, how much they're worth, and then a little bit about what to expect. So all of the homework, quizzes, and final exam are open book, open notes. That's not actually that helpful because this isn't a course where we memorize things, it's a course where we think, and you'll need to use the skills in order to pass the test, not memorize things. Time limit. None for homework. There's going to be a time limit on quizzes, but it should be pretty comfortable. It's about double what the average person takes to complete the quiz. So if you're familiar with the material and you've been doing the homework, and also there's a practice quiz, and you're feeling comfortable with the material, time shouldn't be an issue. It's not meant to be. And there are practice versions of quizzes and stuff. For homework, you're going to get multiple attempts. For anything that's auto-graded, the questions will change with each attempt, but you get more than one attempt. And there's lots of practice exercises with solutions available that aren't part of your homework exercises. For quizzes, you'll get 2 attempts, an actual quiz and a retake. There's also a practice quiz with solutions available. The final exam, there'll be a practice exam with solutions available as well. No retakes on the exam. There's going to be 1 extra credit assignment worth 20 points or a 2% bump to your grade, and that's going to be a course eval. Okay, so that's the stuff you'll be doing and how much it's worth. Late policy. So check-ins, you can't complete them late, they're not accepted, because they're meant to be a timely check-in, and it's not really the kind of thing you can make up. If you miss a check-in, you do the next week's check-in. You can miss up to 5 without penalty, though, so just remember to check in. It'll only take a couple of minutes, and you don't have to be caught up on the work to do it. Homework and quizzes are not penalized if you get them in within 1 week of the due date. Canvas is going to call them late, but Canvas doesn't understand my late policy, so don't worry about it if it says it's late. Canvas just says, this is past the due date that was entered into my mechanical interface. So if it's more than 1 week late, I'll accept it for full credit. Or if it's within 1 week. If it's more than 1 week late, it may not be accepted. If you are in this category, it is more important than ever to communicate so we can come up with some kind of plan to get you caught up. If I haven't heard from you and it's more than 1 week late, then it's going to be zeros. My piece of advice here is to not be consistently 1 week behind. This is meant to be a buffer. If you are consistently getting your work in on Tuesdays or something instead of Monday, that's fine. But if you are up against that 1 week deadline every single week, you're setting yourselves up to not have any leeway should something come up. So use that wisely. Final exam, dock 25 points for each day it's late, in part because the final exam has to be in that week and I've got to grade it. Next page is important information about dropping the class with a W, without a W, changing your pass note, basically all of the important dates and housekeeping. So be sure to read through that carefully. And then finally, on page 8, we have our course schedule. As I said before, the course is not organized like Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4. Instead, we're going to do lessons from multiple units at a time, because all of this stuff really is interconnected. So here's how to read the schedule. For week 1, we're going to focus on Unit 1, what is an argument, and Unit 4, what is critical thinking. And for week 2, we'll focus on what are the standards for evaluating argument, what does it take to prove validity, a very high standard for evaluating arguments, and we'll introduce cognitive biases for the first time. Okay, so that's why there's more than one thing in a row. And then at the end of the row, we've got a due date. That's when the homework associated with these modules is going to be due. So at first, it might feel a bit confusing switching between tasks, but there are a number of reasons to do it this way, and they'll make more sense as you've actually gone through the material and you start seeing it all come together at the end, and then especially on the final exam, it'll make sense. But just to say a bit about why we're doing it this way. So as I said before, Unit 1, Understanding Arguments, is all about being able to identify and analyze arguments. What does analyze mean? We're using it in the sort of break it down and really understand how the pieces fit together. Being able to not just point at the pieces of the argument you were given, but even add in the missing pieces and reconstruct it in a clearer way. So we're going to spend a lot of time just really engaging with arguments with the goal of understanding them deeply. Then we also want to be able to say whether they're good or bad. And so we're going to develop skills for evaluating arguments. Once we have the skills for evaluating arguments, those actually help us to engage with understanding arguments and being able to analyze and reconstruct them. That'll make more sense when you have those skills. So the evaluating stuff helps with the analyzing and understanding stuff, and you can't evaluate unless you've actually understood it. These things start to get related. And then by the time we get to, so we'll do biases earlier in the semester and then fallacies later in the semester. Well, fallacies kind of puts together our analyzing and evaluating stuff at the same time. And these two sections will look at sort of scientific thinking or evaluations of reasoning, including how to evaluate statistical reasoning, reasoning about probability, reasoning about causation, and we'll tend to focus on errors and reasoning about these three categories, and fallacies are all about errors in reasoning. So you're going to see relationships between these categories too. So it's all interrelated, and I've tried to design the material in a way that it sort of comes together really naturally, and you can start putting skills together in order to use them to understand and evaluate real arguments. But there's one other reason to do it this way, and that is you get more time to deal with the logic material and to practice so that basically if we just did a huge chunk of logic first, it would be a long and for a lot of us painful couple of weeks of just logic. Whereas when we do it this way, you get to practice more slowly over a longer period of time and ask questions. My experience is that students tend to do much better with the logic, especially, but with the course overall, when it's structured in this sort of weird way. You can let me know at the end of the course if that's true. Okay, page 9 is essentially a checklist. You might print it out and just use it as a reminder, but it's pretty simple. Every week you're going to have a homework assignment. Homeworks are going to have multiple parts, FYI, so make sure you get all the parts done. The reason why there are multiple parts is if you want to redo some part of the homework, you don't have to redo the whole thing. You just do the part you need to redo. So sometimes there will be a quiz, and quizzes are going to be shorter, than a final exam, and they're not worth a ton, but they are certainly worth enough to take seriously. And then you're going to have a check-in every week. But here's a schedule if you like a neat checklist. Finally, there's a syllabus quiz. This is identical to the quiz in Canvas, which is what you need to complete for credit. But if you want to, do it on your own before you do Canvas, here's all the questions that are in that quiz. Okay, that completes our tour of the syllabus.